Alright, so now begins Wrectified from Scratch. So this object is going to be a controller, a key press controller. Why don't we name it keyboard? There we go. We're going to add some logic. I'm going to add a sensor that's a keyboard sensor. Set it to W and name it forward. So the sensor is named forward. We're going to connect it over to Python. I'm going to add another sensor and name it left and have it be the A key. You can use the up arrow and the left arrow if you want to, but I'm going to use WASD. So the important thing is that it's named forward and left. Then we're going to do templates, Python, game logic, simple. And then I'm going to name this control, or actually key control. There we go. If slist not in own. So what we're going to do is build a list of sensors to serialize them. So that means that their output will always be the same order. So if I'm pressing forward and left, the output will always be forward first and then left next. So now I've built the list of sensors. And I use this else statement down here. So this means that the list has been built. We know it. For sensors in own slist, if sensors.positive, I'm going to initiate a list right here I forgot about. Key press dot append. That means we're adding an object to the list. Right now the list starts off blank, and then each sensor that's positive that's in this list gets added to it like this. And we're going to add the name of the sensor, not the sensor itself. And then we're going to do own read equals string key press. And I'm going to set this like this like that. So now I put the script inside the Python controller. I'm adding a property, naming it read. This is for debugging. I'm going to name it a string, and then set it to debug, and then turn on show debug properties. Alright, we're throwing an error somewhere, so we do window toggle system console. Nope. Curious. So I thought that I'd at least be throwing an error. Print set. Oh, you know what it is? No? Yep. No, that's not it. I was thinking I got rid of main, but that's not it either. Oh, see, I'm silly. I had L capitalized here and not here. There we go. Now it should all work. There we go. So you'll notice when I hit forward, if I hit left and forward, the list always has forward first. That's because we set this order here. So now this is a serialized list. So I'm going to add the rest of the key presses. Down, or we'll say back, because forward is forward and left is left. Now we have back. This keyboard, the home row keys are worn off almost now, so it's a little tricky for me to find them. I've went through 2 keyboards now while learning Blender coding, and I share a keyboard with a 6-year-old too, so popsicles don't help. So now we've got forward, left, back, and right. And I have to add them to this list as well. So now you'll notice it doesn't work. I have to connect this up. There we go. Okay, so now if I hit forward and left, forward and right, forward and back, they all work at the same time. I think most keyboards only allow up to 3 key presses at once. Some allow more, but for the most part I think it's 3. And it depends on the row that they're in. So I can hit W, S, and A, but if I hit left or right, it won't pop up from here. So it's kind of tricky, but at the most you'll ever need is forward left, forward, back, back right. So those all work. So you'll never need 3 control inputs from these 3 at the same time. So it's working. It sets the string. Now we need if target, if own target is string. So I forgot I needed to type if own type is string, own target own.scene own target. So now what this does is I can declare what my target object is going to be. My target object is going to be an actor. I'm going to add a cube to the scene and name it actor. I have to go let my dog in just a second. He is scratching. Alright, I'll be back in just 1 second. Okay, so now I'm going to add a property called move that is a string inside of the actor. I'm going to do else right here. This basically says that if my target is not a string, it's a game object, because we're not going to set it to anything but a string or a game object, so it's going to stay that way. So own target. We could do an exception for if it's other things, but we don't really need to. Own target move equals string key press. So now you can see that it's actually piping the list to the target actor. So right now the list is a string, and we can do some pretty cool stuff with that. Since it's a string, I can do if the property move is equal to forward, not forward, we want forward. I'm in a motion. So now he moves. So as you can see, this can be handy. You can send it all kinds of stuff, but if it's forward, it'll only go forward. So this is basically if forward is pressed and A and S and D are not pressed, you can do this. The logic equivalent of this would be keyboard W, keyboard A, invert, keyboard S, invert, keyboard D, invert. So that's the logic equivalent of it. So it takes 4 bricks to get that. So we can also do comma, space, left, and add another motion brick. Point 1 and turn 1 degree. So there we go. Oh, I should probably turn it back on. There we go. So we're steering a separate actor with a controller. So this works, but it could get ugly real fast because there's going to be a lot of motion states. So we're going to get rid of those. And add time, which is a integer property time not equal to 0. And then Python. If own move equals. So this is more flexible using Python because I can work with a list. So not only can I do this right now, if move equals forward, I can also use if forward in own move to be less rigid. But I'm not going to do that right now. We're going to use, actually no, we'll go ahead and use that. I'll get rid of this. So if own.local linear velocity .y is less than 5, own.apply force 0, 90, 0, 1. So actor move, actor controller. So now I connected up time not 0 to actor controller. And then in the key control, own target time is 120. So now, when I feed him commands, it sets the property time to 120. And we need to go to key control and turn move from a string. Now it'll send it a list instead of a string. Alright, now this is missing a physics controller, so it's not going to do anything. So I set it to dynamic, set its collision pounds, and I'm going to go ahead and check compound now for later. I'm going to add a cube and grab it, move it down -2, hit tab, scale on the locked z-axis, which is shift Z. Now, you'll notice the actor springs to life there when I press forward. So basically we've made our own servo motion right here, and it'll get up to 5 units per second, or whatever this means, and then won't go above that, which is really handy for things like going up steps. Like so. See, he maintains the same speed uphill as he would downhill. So he has a type of servo motion. Now, if own move equals blank, own dot local linear velocity dot y times equals 0.95. So this is friction. So when I let off W, he stops. But there's other axes he can slide on. Alright, so I'm going to tone this down to about 0.8. So I think he'll stop even on a hill, kind of. Okay, so the servo motion part is working. I could just even do and now in theory he should just stop. But he won't. What we need is to add a sensor. Cube. So now we have a little sensor here. And we're going to parent it to the actor. I'm going to name it ground. And then set it to a sensor type. And set it to collision, Python, and it shouldn't detect the object it's parented to. Now I'm going to connect across up to the actor controller. But what sucks about this is now this is on forever. It'll never turn off. Or actually, no, it should pulse. Okay, yeah, so it'll only, when it's true, it'll trigger this once. So a way to see if it is triggering it is do a value on So it's going to go up forever now because my timer doesn't turn off. So we need own timer minus equals 1. So now, when I press W, it's going to set the timer to 120, but when I release, own time. If own time is greater than or equal to 1, own time minus equals 1. There we go. So you'll notice timer goes down and then drops off, and then now technically it's not using any resources because the timer has dropped to 0, so it's not running as Python. So what this is for is so actors can fall asleep. We can do if own time equals 0, own dot suspend dynamics, else own dot restore dynamics. So when this reaches 0, the only way we're going to be able to test this is to drop the actor. Or let's just see if I threw an error. So it should be working. So now, when the actor's time hits 0, it suspends his dynamics. And then if his time is not 0, it restores his dynamics. And what that means is that actors that aren't being used won't like fall off a cliff or get bumped or pushed or anything when they're not being used. And UPBGE has a movement sensor that I can also hook up to this. And then if this was a movement sensor, which it's not, we could have bumping the actor hard enough set the time value so it'll animate the actor. So if you bump an actor and they're moving, they could walk or do whatever a moving actor would do. But for now, we're just going to leave it like this. So not using barely any resources, using resources, drops back off, doesn't use any resources. So that's very important. What that is for is there's going to be all kinds of vehicles and multiple actors that you could swap between, and we don't want them using a bunch of resources when we're not using them. And then when the AI is controlling them, they'll be turning on their clock and turning off their clock and all that good stuff. So for now, we'll just add